Dean finished the show, took his bows, and walked off stage with a smile still painted on his face. The applause followed him into the hallway. But the moment the door to his dressing room closed, the smile vanished. He loosened his tie and sat down hard on the couch. The silence felt heavy, like the air before a storm. At 1:40 a.m., the phone rang. Dean stared at it for a long second before picking it up. "Yeah." A calm, unfamiliar voice answered. "Mr. Martin, this is Vincent Corsetti." Dean didn't respond right away. He knew better than to rush. "Good evening, Mr. Corsetti. I hear there was a misunderstanding earlier tonight," Corsetti said pleasantly. Too pleasantly. "My associate tells me you declined my invitation." "That's right," Dean said. "I'm booked. I have a show." A pause. Just long enough to remind Dean who controlled the silence. "Dean," Corsetti said, dropping the formality. "You're one of my favorites. I've always treated you with respect. I pay well. I keep people safe. All I'm asking is 3 songs for my daughter. Family matters to me." Family. Dean felt something tighten in his chest. "Family matters to me too," he said. "And my word matters. I don't cancel shows. People paid to see me." Another pause. This one colder. "You don't seem to understand how things work in this town." Dean exhaled slowly. "I understand exactly how they work. That's why I'm saying no." The line went quiet. Then Corsetti spoke again, his voice no longer friendly. "Men who embarrass me tend to have problems. Dean, accidents, fires, bad luck. I don't want that for you." Dean closed his eyes for a brief moment, then opened them. "Neither do the first, but I'm still not singing." The call ended, no threat spelled out. None needed. The next morning, Dean's car wouldn't start. The mechanic said the fuel line had been cut clean through. That night, a man followed him from the sands to his house, headlights never quite disappearing from the rearview mirror. 2 days later, a reporter called asking about rumors Dean was difficult to work with. Studio gossip moved fast when someone wanted it to. Saturday came anyway. Dean walked on stage like always. Same touchedo, same easy charm, same smooth voice. But something had changed. People in the front rows noticed it. He wasn't pretending to be drunk. He wasn't joking as much. There was an edge under the cool. Backstage, Eddie paced. "Dean, please," he whispered. "Corsetti's furious. I heard he's at the wedding right now telling people you humiliated him." Dean adjusted his cufflinks. "Then he shouldn't have tried to own me." "You're not untouchable," Eddie said. "Nobody is." Dean looked at him calmly. "I'm not trying to be untouchable. I'm just trying to be free." That night, when Dean left the sands, 2 men stepped out of the shadows near the parking lot. One blocked his path. The others stood behind him. "Mr. Corsetti wants another conversation." The first man said. Dean didn't raise his voice. "Tell Mr. Corsetti, I already gave him my answer." The second man stepped closer. "You're a brave guy, Martin. Or a stupid one." Dean turned slowly, so they were both in front of him. "If you're going to hurt me, do it. But I'm not singing for him. And if anything happens to me, every reporter in this town is going to know why." That made them hesitate. Just for a second. It was enough. "Get lost," Dean said. They did. By Monday, word had spread. Quietly, not in the papers, in hallways, dressing rooms, union offices. Dean Martin had told Vincent Corsetti no and live. More than that, he hadn't backed down. Other performers started refusing invitations. Not loudly, not publicly, but the spell was broken. Corsetti never touched Dean again. He didn't forgive him, but he respected him. And in that world, respect mattered more than revenge. Years later, when asked why he took the risk, Dean shrugged. If you let fear decide your life, he said, you don't really have one. I already sang for enough people I didn't believe in. I wasn't about to start singing for threats. That night, in 1964, never made the headlines. No police reports. New trials. Just a quiet shift in power. Dean Martin didn't beat the mob. He did something more dangerous. He said no. Dean didn't call as a celebrity asking for favors. He called as a citizen asking for protection. The receptionist didn't recognize his voice, but the name traveled fast. Within an hour, his lawyer called back. They're listening. That was all, Marcus said. Dean understood what that meant. If he was going to do this, there was no turning back now. That afternoon, a man from the Department of Justice arrived quietly. No suit, no badge shown, no introductions that could be overheard. Just a calm presence sitting at Dean's kitchen table, taking notes while Dean laid everything out. The visits, the threats, the vandalism, the wedding demand, the names: Vincent Corsetti, Thomas Giuliano, date, times, exact words. Dean didn't exaggerate. He didn't dramatize. He spoke like a man reading his own obituary and correcting it line by line. The agent finally looked up. You understand what this means, Mr. Martin? Dean nodded. Yeah? I become a problem. You already are, the man said gently. But if you cooperate, if you testify when the time comes, this stops being just your problem. Dean leaned back. Then let's do it. Word reached Robert Kennedy by Friday morning. Kennedy had been hunting men like Corsetti for years, trying to cut the arteries that fed organized crime's grip on Las Vegas. What he'd always lacked was something powerful enough to crack the wall of silence. Witnesses vanished. Performers stayed quiet. Everyone complied. Until now, Dean Martin was not a small fish. He wasn't a frightened dealer or a low-level employee. He was one of the most famous entertainers in the world, refusing publicly, repeatedly, and documenting everything that mattered. By Sunday night, the pressure shifted. The black car stopped showing up. The phone went quiet. No more notes under the door. Instead, something else happened. Frank Sinatra called, not angry, not commanding. Tired. Dean, he said, what the hell did you do? Dean didn't dodge it. I went over their heads. A long silence. Frank finally exhaled. You brought the feds into this? I brought the law into it, Dean said. There's a difference. You just declared war. No, Dean said calmly. I refused to be owned. Frank didn't argue this time. His voice was lower. Corsetti won't forget. I know. And, this changes everything. Vegas, the Pac-Me I know. Another pause. Then Frank said something Dean didn't expect. You've got more guts than I ever gave you credit for. I never wanted guts, Dean replied. I just wanted to sleep at night. Within weeks, federal investigations intensified. Quietly at first. Audits, surveillance, subpoenas. Corsetti's name started appearing in places it never had before. The sands didn't change hands overnight, but the grip loosened. The invincibility cracked. Corsetti never contacted Dean again. Years later, long after indictments and hearings and closed-door deals had rewritten Las Vegas, someone asked Dean why he didn't just give in for the sake of safety. Dean answered the same way, every time. Because the first time you sing out of fear, you'll sing out of fear forever. He never framed it as heroism, never called it bravery. He understood the cost too well. Friends distanced themselves. Opportunities quietly disappeared. Invitations stopped coming as easily, but something else arrived in their place. Peace. When younger performers asked him how to survive the business, Dean didn't talk about contracts or agents or image. He said this: figure out what you won't do. Decide it early, because sooner or later, someone will ask, and if you don't know the answer when they ask, they'll decide it for you. Dean Martin didn't break the mob's hold on Vegas by himself, but he proved something dangerous to people who relied on fear that no was possible. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything. Dane didn't hesitate. He started at the beginning and told it clean. The dressing room visit. The veiled threats. The wedding demand. The car outside his ex-wife's house. The slashed tires. The break-ins. The message under the door. Names, dates, exact words. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't need to. The truth was dangerous enough on its own. There was a long silence on the line. Then Bobby Kennedy spoke again, slower now, sharper. "You're not exaggerating any of this." "No," Dean said. "If anything, I'm leaving things out. You understand that if you cooperate, there's no going back. Once you testify, you don't get to quietly return to your life." Dean looked out over the strip, the lights flickering like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. "I already can't go back." "All right," Kennedy said. "Then listen to me very carefully. From this moment on, you don't confront anyone. You don't respond to threats. You don't warn anybody. You document everything, and you let us handle it. Do you understand?" "Yes." "You'll have protection, discreet but real, and when the time comes, we'll need you on record." Dean exhaled. "I'll be there." When the call ended, Dean stayed on the balcony for a long time. For the first time since this began, he felt something shift. Not safety, not relief. Direction. Within 48 hours. Things changed. The black car disappeared. The phone stopped ringing. The vandalism stopped cold, like someone had flipped a switch. Corsetti didn't apologize. Men like that never did. But the message was clear. Someone bigger had entered the room. Behind the scenes, the pressure was relentless. Subpoenas went out. Financial records were pulled. Associates were questioned. The Sands felt different. Quieter. Nervous. People who used to swagger now watched their backs. Frank Sinatra called again a week later. This time, he didn't lecture. "You went nuclear," Frank said. "I went legal. You realize you just blew up the arrangement?" "Good." Frank was quiet. "Then, Sufta, you always were the stubborn one." Dean smiled faintly. "You always knew that." "I won't say I'd have done the same," Frank admitted. "But I get it." That was as close to an apology as Frank Sinatra ever came. Months later, when the investigations became public, headlines danced around the truth without ever quite touching it. Federal pressure increases on Las Vegas interests. Entertainers cooperate in organized crime probe. Names were whispered. Deals were broken. Power shifted. Dean testified quietly, without cameras, without speeches. He didn't try to be a hero. He answered questions. He told the truth. He went home. Corsetti never touched him again. Years later, someone asked Dean if it had been worth it. The fear, the danger, the fallout. Dean thought about the nights he slept without checking the door, about looking his children in the eye without shame, about standing on stage knowing no one owned him. "Yeah," he said simply. It was worth it. He never framed it as courage. He framed it as a line. "Everybody's got one," he said. "A place where you either stop being yourself or you stop being afraid. I just decided which one I could live with." And that's the part most people miss. Dean Martin didn't take on the mob because he wanted to be brave. He did it because he refused to belong to anyone ever again. Not a gangster, not a studio, not a system built on fear. He chose freedom. And once you choose that, there's no song powerful enough to make you sing on command ever again. Dean didn't rush. He sat there and spoke for nearly an hour, laying everything out in a calm, steady voice that never once asked for sympathy. He described the threats exactly as they were delivered. The men who showed up uninvited. The way fear was disguised as courtesy. The silent rules that governed Las Vegas, where performers were expected to obey, money moved through shadows, and favors were enforced with consequences. He explained how contracts weren't really contracts, how intimidation replaced negotiation, how power was maintained not through ownership but through fear. He named names. He explained methods. He filled in gaps no one outside that world had ever been allowed to see. When he finished, there was a pause on the line, not hesitation. Calculation. Finally, the voice on the other end said they would need him in Washington. A formal deposition, grand jury testimony, everything on the record. Dean didn't ask for guarantees. He already knew there were none. He said yes without hesitation. You understand this is dangerous, he was told. We can offer protection, but we can't promise safety. I know, Dean said. Then why are you doing this? Dean didn't answer right away. He thought about his children, about what they would grow up believing was normal, about fear disguised as success, about what it meant to bow your head and survive versus standing upright and living. Because someone has to, he said, and because I want my kids to know you don't bow to bullies, even powerful ones. Within days, federal agents were in and out of his life. Interviews, notes, follow-ups. The outline of a case began to take shape, and it didn't take long for word to leak. Vincent Corsetti heard that Dean Martin hadn't just refused him. He'd gone to the government. In their world. That wasn't defiance. That was betrayal. Frank Sinatra called. You testified against Corsetti. Dean didn't soften it. He didn't justify it. Yes! There was silence. Long, heavy silence. Then Frank spoke, his voice flat, stripped of warmth. You're dead to me. Dean understood immediately. Frank couldn't be seen anywhere near someone who crossed that line. Not without consequences. Not without danger. A friendship that had survived decades, fights, fame, and failures ended in a single sentence. I understand, Dean said. The line went dead in December 1964. The federal indictment came down. Racketeering, intimidation, conspiracy. Dean's testimony was central. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just unmovable truth. The trial would drag on for years, but the indictment alone cracked something open. Other performers quietly stepped forward. Old secrets resurfaced. The invisible structure that controlled Vegas began to fracture. The retaliation came quietly. Dean finished out the year on stage, but when his contract ended, it wasn't renewed. Casinos stopped calling, doors closed without explanation. Vegas, the city he helped define, was suddenly unavailable to him. So he left. He worked in Los Angeles. Reno anywhere, Corsetti's reach didn't dominate. His career took a hit, but it didn't end. It changed. Smaller rooms, different audiences, more freedom. The Rat Pack dissolved not with a fight, but with distance. Frank stayed away. Sammy stayed cautious. Dean was professionally alone for a while, but something else replaced what he lost. Respect. Quiet respect from people who understood what he'd done, even if they never said it out loud. In 1966, Vincent Corsetti was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. One man didn't dismantle the system, but one man proved it could be challenged. After that, others found their nerve. Dean and Frank never truly reconciled. They crossed paths occasionally. Polite nods, short exchanges. No warmth, no return. Some friendships don't survive integrity. Years later, when Dean was asked about that time, about losing Vegas, losing Frank, losing the life he'd built, he didn't answer quickly. He thought about the fear, the nights waiting for footsteps, the costs. Then he smiled, faint but certain. Yeah, he said, it was worth it. Why? Because I got something more important back. What? Myself. Today, most people remember Dean Martin for the voice, the charm, the effortless cool. But those who know the full story remember something else. The night he said no when yes was safer. The week he lived under threat and didn't bend. The year he chose freedom over protection. He didn't change Las Vegas with a song. He changed it by refusing to sing on command, and sometimes the bravest thing a man can say isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just two words. I'm not available.